at the beginning of the season, I felt like I was on the optimistic side of Rangers fans, projecting them for 85 wins and just sneaking into that final wildcard spot. Now, they ended the season with 90 wins, with the second wildcard spot and a tiebreaker away from winning the AL West. Basically, way better than pretty much anybody expected this team to do. Coming into this postseason, the Rangers have a couple of hot bats. They have the best offense in the American League, but right now it is being led by Marcus Semien and Adolis Garcia. Marcus Semien the entire month of September and one game in October. He's got 29 games in that span. He's got 940 OPS and 9 home runs, by far the most he's had in any single month. He has been a slugging machine, and Adolis Garcia in the last couple weeks has really turned it on. In 13 games during that span, he's got 5 home runs and an OPS of 1,059 over the last 14 days. He's been huge for the Rangers all season. Him coming back off of injury was massive for this team. He went down with an injury in that final series against Houston Astros, and he was out for a couple weeks, and the Rangers thought he might be done for the season. He came back, he got hot, he started having great at-bats, and he has helped carry this team across the finish line. He and Marcus Semien have been huge for the Rangers down the stretch. I mean, you could say Corey Seager is hot. I mean, he's not particularly, but for how he's done this season, I mean, you have a couple of 0-for-3 days in a row, and that's a cold streak because Corey Seager has been one of the best hitters in the entirety of Major League Baseball this season. This offense it goes in peaks and valleys, but you look at basically every single number, and this Rangers offense is leading in that category in the American League. You want to look at batting average, on base, slugging percentage, home runs. I mean, they just do everything incredibly well from top to bottom. It is not just the Corey Seagers. It is not just the Marcus Semiens. There's also Evan Carter in the 9-hole who's come up and played 23 games and has an OPS over 1,000, hitting over 300 and 5 home runs in that span for a guy who wasn't really projected to hit for all that much power. I mean, this Rangers offense is incredibly good. Now, the depth of their starting rotation, that is where there are some questions in play. The top two are as good as just about anybody's top two in baseball. You have Jordan Montgomery and Nathan Eovaldi. Montgomery was a deadline acquisition, and he has been everything the Rangers could have hoped for and then some this year for the Rangers in a rotation that was full with a lot of guys with a lot of potential and a lot of guys with a lot of injury history. I mean, you start with Jacob DeGrom, who pitched 6 games for the Texas Rangers and looked amazing in those games, and then had Tommy John surgery. And they also had Max Scherzer, who was a huge trade deadline acquisition and was fantastic for the Rangers, but he is probably done for the year. Maybe he's not. Nathan Eovaldi was the leader of this staff until he got hurt early in the second half, and he came back and didn't really look like his full self. In his last start, he had his velocity back, which was a good sign, but he was still knocked around by the Seattle Mariners. So if Nathan Eovaldi is anywhere close to the first half version of himself that was the all-star starter and was one of the best pitchers in the entirety of baseball for the first half of the season, if he's anywhere close to that, the Rangers have as good a 1-2 punch, nay, a better 1-2 punch than literally anybody. You got Dane Dunning, who might make a playoff start for the Rangers, and the depth behind him. John Gray is on the IL, at least through probably the ALDS. The Rangers won't be able to use him on their staff. They could have really used him in this short series, but it'll be Andrew Heaney or Martin Perez taking the mound for them, and those guys have been fine. Heaney had a great game on Saturday to clinch a playoff spot for the Texas Rangers. Martin Perez came up pretty big in his few innings of work on Sunday in the final game of the season. And Dunning pitching on short rest also did pretty darn well. Dunning has been the key contributor to this staff. It is going to be short rest if he pitches in Game 3. We'll see if the Rangers do that. Who knows? But the starting pitching staff has a lot of options, a lot of great options at the top, but anywhere in between, if Max Scherzer comes back, which the Rangers have no idea. He was projected to be out for the entire season. He's rehabbing, but there is no timeline for his return. He could return tomorrow. He could return in the World Series, or he could be actually done for the season. The Rangers don't know. Max Scherzer doesn't know. But if he comes back, that is a huge boost of a top 3 of Max Scherzer, Nathan Eovaldi, and Jordan Montgomery. That's an incredible top 3. Now, why is this team's bullpen good enough to win the World Series? If I would have said yes even 2 weeks ago, I would have been absolutely just jailed tremendously by Rangers fans. But the good thing about bullpens is the bad thing about bullpens is that they're volatile. And the Rangers bullpen was horrendous. It truly historically terrible all season long. And it seems like maybe in the last week, maybe 2 weeks, this Rangers bullpen is starting to figure it out. Jose Leclerc is going to be the closer. He has earned that role. His fastball velocity is way back. He looks like the top best version of himself. Josh Sborz is back off the IL, and he's looked great in his couple of stints. Jonathan Hernandez looks like he's coming into his own, and Aroldis Chapman, if he's not pitching on back-to-back days, has actually looked pretty good. But do I trust him in the big moments to not give up some massive home run in the playoffs like he's given up massive home runs down the stretch? I don't necessarily think so. But again, bullpens are finicky. Everyone's bullpen is finicky. Even the good ones are, 2 bad pitches away from blowing a game and therefore blowing a series and going from looking like an amazing bullpen to a terrible bullpen. So the Rangers have guys who can do it, who have good stuff. Leclerc is feeling pretty trustworthy right there, and if Josh Sborz and Jonathan Hernandez can be serviceable, and if they even put Will Smith on the playoff roster, which is a question mark, it seems like he's done it in big situations before. Do I trust him to do it now? I don't know that I do, but hey, anything can happen because the playoffs are always incredibly buck wild. Now, this team's greatest strength is obviously its offense. I've talked about it before, but Corey Seager finished the year as a 7-WAR player despite missing 43 games. He had a 1,013 OPS, nearly won the batting title. If his opponent didn't sit on the final day of the season, then maybe Corey Seager would have still walked away with the batting title, but still hitting 327 with a 390 on base and 33 home runs in just 119 games. That 33 home runs ties his career high. Adolis Garcia had 39 home runs. Mitch Garver was incredible for this lineup, 870 OPS and 19 home runs in just 87 games played. I mean, the depth is truly astonishing. 5 all-star hitters, and that's not even including the young Evan Carter, like I said earlier, and Leo Taveras, who's been very, very good, and Nathaniel Lowe, who at times can be as hot as anybody, and he's going to have a lot to prove against his younger brother in that wild card series. But what am I most worried about this team in the playoffs? Pitching. Like I said, starting pitching, if it can hold up, if the bullpen can prove that this last 2-week stretch isn't just a fluke and that they are actually major leaguers, that it terrifies me to this day. And the lineup at times in crucial moments, like in game 162, has shown the propensity to sometimes lay an egg, as all offenses do. Still, I'm kind of scared about everything at this point, but also confident in everything. That's just playoff baseball. But how far is this team going to go? Well, it could lose in the wild card series and lose both games. It's very possible. But also this team could win it all. Like, they really could. They were one of the best teams in baseball for basically the entirety of this season and just faltered at the wrong time with injuries befalling them at the exact wrong time when they were playing the biggest games against their division rivals and faltering. It was incredibly frustrating. But hey, I'm going to split the difference and say this team goes to the ALCS where they lose to a red-hot Twins team. I don't know. But hey, anything is possible with this team. If they make it past the wild card round, that's a great year. Still, no matter what happens, it's a pretty great year given where the expectations were at the beginning of the season. Not great compared to where the expectations were 2 months ago, but hey, hindsight is 2020.